Hello and welcome to Not a Buffalo, the show where we discuss the science and technology that will save the world. My name's Ben and I'm here to make you laugh. This is Jack and he's here to make you think, which can only mean that we are talking about the 2020 Ig Nobel Prizes. Woo! Are you excited, Jack?
Yeah, yes I am. I'm extremely excited because this, I think, is the first time we've had a regular feature on the show that we've been regular with.
I think it is. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Look at us getting all professional like.
Yeah, and you know what's even better? We have the return of formerly the mystery segment, known as the Hollage segment as well at the end of this. So we're going to have two regular segments on our first regular show.
That's incredible. We've come so far since those heady days of since we were just two guys recording in our bedrooms, and now we're just two guys recording in our bedrooms.
Yeah, because we can't go outside. I mean, before it was that we didn't want to go outside. Now it's that we can't go outside.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, just for some background context, for those who don't know, I'm sure a lot of people out there are familiar with the Nobel Prizes, which are being announced, I think at time of recording, this week. I believe the physics prize has just been announced, which went to people for black hole research, so that's really interesting. Check that out. But back in 1994, I believe, 1991, sorry, the Ig Nobel Prizes were started as a way of making people laugh, but also making them think, as I said in the intro. And the 2020 Ig Nobel Prizes were announced a couple of weeks ago. Again, at time of recording, obviously not when this comes out. We record way in advance. We are super prepared that way.
So prepared. There's
some great advancements in science, shall we say, but also just very interesting stories. So Jack, which one do you want to start us off with?
Oh, this is the thing. There are 10 here, and they are all fabulous. But I think I'm going to start with the one that was at the top, possibly just because it was alphabetically the first one, which is the Acoustics Prize, which goes to Austria, Sweden, Japan, the USA, and Switzerland. And researchers Stephen Reber, I'm going to get a lot of these names wrong, Stephen Reber, Takashi Nishimura, Judith Janish, which is a great name, Mark Robertson, and Tecumseh Fitch. What a great difference between first name and last name, for inducing a female Chinese alligator to bellow in an airtight chamber filled with helium-enriched air.
Reading that just made me laugh. And just a side note, thanks very much for starting the trend of we have to say the names, because I know I'm definitely going to have some difficulty with the names going forward.
This is the fun part of the Ig Nobel Prize, isn't it? Is reading our names. We know we're getting them wrong, but that's the fun thing, isn't it? We know it's wrong, and so do our listeners.
We're doing our best, and we are more than happy for people to correct us. We welcome corrections, so please do write into us.
Or better yet, voicemail into us.
Yeah.
Just,
Do we have a function for accepting those? I'm sure we do, somewhere.
I'm sure Twitter has audio attachments, or some. I don't know anything about Twitter. Ben manages our Twitter.
Badly. just to put that out there. But yeah, why don't you tell us about why these researchers decided to make a female Chinese alligator bellow in an airtight chamber filled with helium-enriched air?
Perhaps it's worth... Let's address the helium in the room first, since there is no elephant. The helium is present because it makes it easier to hear the sound and the pitches that the alligator is making sounds at. So then we sort of reach the question of, why do we want to have the alligator screaming into a room full of helium? Why do we want to have them screaming into a room, and why do we want to understand that scream? I'm going to stop using the term scream.
It's a bellow.
A bellow.
Technically
yes,
a bellow.
A bellow. Sorry, yes. So why do we want the alligator to bellow, Jeffrey? So we want the alligator to bellow because it's not very well understood what the sounds that reptiles make mean. There is some understanding of different sound patterns from, say, dogs and cats, because they're domestic animals. They're quite easy to study. They are very heavily studied. Alligators are not so heavily studied on the sound front, and so the title, actually, of the paper gives kind of an overview of what they're attempting here. So, a Chinese alligator in heliox, that's helium-enriched oxygen, formant frequencies in a crocodilian. So, a formant is a set of bands of frequencies in phonetic which determine the character and quality of vowel sounds in a language. And so the idea is that by having this crocodile bellow into the room, it's going to be possible to identify some of the sound patterns and perhaps work out what their calls actually mean. At the moment, it's sort of roughly assumed that the calls have something to do with indicating the size and ferocity of them. So maybe it's a way of like indicating to other crocodiles that you shouldn't come over here because I'm bigger than you, that kind of thing. But it's generally very difficult to identify them. And so that's what this research is about, is trying to better understand the communication between crocodilians, which is quite an interesting idea.
I think from my reading of it as well, doesn't it also give us an insight into avian? Because I know they mentioned a lot about, so birds, essentially, when I say avian, also obviously use sound for mating calls and to establish territory and everything. And the funny thing that links sparrows and crocodiles is that they're both descended from dinosaurs, or from the time of dinosaurs, and so it gives us an insight back into the ancient past as well. Is that did I read that right?
Yeah, you did. There is a direct line from the pigeon to the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and crocodiles are quite interesting because they've remained pretty much unchanged as creatures for several million years. So understanding their calls might give a sort of indication of the evolution of birdsong even. There are all sorts of interesting links with this research. This is one of the things I love about the Ig Nobel Prizes. I remember listening to an interview with the guy who ran them, and he described it as research which makes you laugh and then makes you think. And I think this does just that, actually.
Yeah, they have a good reason for doing a lot of this research, and it just ends up having a rather amusing initial result, or on the face of it, an unusual methodology, yes. I suppose, going about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
Like the one from last year about, there was one about pizza last year. I can't remember what it was, but something about pizza in Italy.
Protects against illness and death.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the medicine prize.
That was the one. I couldn't remember if it was like, does it just taste better if it's in Italy? And I was like, no, it feels like there was an actual, like, that was a great one. I really enjoyed that one last year.
Pizza, if pizza is made and eaten in Italy, it protects against illness and death. Or might protect against illness and death. We actually should follow up and see if they had any further study into that one.
I would be very surprised if it does. Unless, like, the whole Mediterranean diet is running on some kind of advanced placebo effect. At which point it becomes like, would it be ethical to reveal that the Mediterranean diet is a placebo effect?
Probably not. You'd be responsible for the death of thousands of Italians and
exactly.
French
like. I hope it's not. I mean, I can't imagine it is, but at the same time, it's one of those things that could totally happen.
That'd be worrying. I mean, you've set me up there as a perfect segue to go into this year's medicine prize, but I'm not going to, because my favourite was the psychology prize.
Oh.
Miranda Jacomin and Nicholas Rule devised a method for identifying narcissists by examining their eyebrows. The title is great. Eyebrows Cue Grandiose Narcissism. There's a lot of previous research about narcissism. So that is the grandiose narcissism specifically is the tendency to be egotistical, self-focused and vain, and is a dark personality trait. Just I'm going to put that in quotation marks. Narcissists can often come across as very charming and likable initially, and it's only once you get to know them a little bit that you realise that they are very self-centered. So being able to recognize them straight away is a fairly useful ability to have, and apparently you can tell that by examining the eyebrows. And I love the methodology in this as well. So what they did is they photographed 39 undergraduate students. I think there was 26 female and 13 male.
They have a photo in the article, don't they? They've blocked out bits of the face, right?
Yeah, they put it into grayscale. They block out everything except the face. So they block out the rest of the head. And then they basically show different elements of it. So sometimes they only show the upper half of the face. Sometimes they only show the lower half of the face. Sometimes they just show the eyes. Sometimes they show the eyes with the eyebrows. And they basically eliminate each different part of the face. I think there was about 10 different pictures that participants could see. And all of these 39 students had completed a narcissistic personality inventory, which is kind of like a personality quiz. And they found that actually just from the eyebrows alone, people could tell who was the narcissist. And they actually did this. So the very final photo that they showed to people was you could only see the eyebrows, and they found that there was a stronger success rate of people identifying the narcissist from that than when you just showed the eyes, which I just thought was...
It's interesting, isn't it?
Just incredible, yeah. Because, you know, eyes are the window to the soul, but the eyebrows are the window to the self-centre.
Yeah. There is this cliche, isn't there, in popular culture of, you know, can't look someone in the eyes and be lying, right? You can tell if someone's lying if you look them in the eyes. But in actual fact, if you look them in the eyebrows, then, well, you probably stand a better chance, according to this research.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I participated in a psychology study when I was at university.
Ooh.
And typically what they do is they tell you that they're measuring one thing when they're actually measuring something else. Because they need to get you into lab conditions. They have to tell you they're doing something, but they don't want to mess up the results. So I just love the idea that this researcher, it doesn't say what they told the undergraduates what they were going to be studying, or if they told them the actual result of the study at the end. But I love the idea that they gathered these 39 graduates and said, yes, we're looking for defining objective features of beauty. And then at the end said, actually, we were testing for narcissism, and turns out you're a massive narcissist and not beautiful.
It would be nicer to find out you're not a narcissist and not beautiful than to find out that you are a narcissist and not beautiful.
I agree.
Not only because no one wants to be a narcissist, but because I think a narcissist would take it harder.
Well, I think that's the thing about narcissists is it's very difficult to shake their self-belief. Like if you tell them they're terrible and present them evidence, they usually find a way of rationalizing it to themselves and just getting angry at you and assume that they are still perfect. And I mean, I definitely can't think of any good examples of grandiose narcissists that are in the public eye at the moment. I'm sure there are some out there.
Hey. I think we should just take that segment of me going "ay" and put that in after every joke. We can call it Donnie the Italian.
Essentially, the summary of this article, from what I can see, is that well-groomed eyebrows tend to indicate a narcissist. So if you see someone who has perfectly primped and plucked and perfected eyebrows, then just watch out, because they may spend far too much time on themselves doing it than on looking out for others.
Noted.
That was the psychology prize in the Ig Nobel Prizes.
Okay. I don't have a segue, but I never have a segue, so that's fine.
I mean, to be fair, in this episode, they are all they're very distinct categories of prizes.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
It would be fairly impressive to be able to segue between them, but I don't think it's strictly necessary.
So I could use the same segue for every single swap.
Exactly.
From this prize to another prize.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the next one I'd like to look at actually is the physics prize, which is to, here come the names, is to Ivan Maximov and Andrei Potosky for determining experimentally what happens to the shape of a living earthworm when one vibrates the earthworm at a high frequency. This is ridiculous, but it is also great. There was one quote, I think we were talking about this before the show, and there's one quote I found in it which is, so we experimented on 4 different types of earthworm. And it's like, just to make sure, right? Because earthworms differ so much.
The thing I like about this is, so the title of the paper was Excitation of Faraday-like Body Waves and Vibrator Living Earthworms.
Yes.
If you kind of understand all the words behind it, you think, did they just shake an earthworm around between their fingers or something?
It was on a plate, I believe, that vibrated. I suppose it's a bit like those machines. What are they called? They are like a weight loss machine, where people stand on them and they just the plate just kind of jiggles.
Oh, power plates.
Yeah, stuff like, it's kind of like that, but with using like much higher frequency waves. Faraday waves, they're named from Michael Faraday, who is an interesting man himself, actually. He was kind of instrumental in the study of electromagnetism and electrochemistry, and he was one of the very first people who wasn't from like a sort of landed or genteel background to be part of the Royal Society. Interesting man. Faraday waves, which is what the earthworm experiment used, are those ones where, I don't know if you've ever seen where someone puts some coloured beads on like very small granules of sand or something like that onto a plate, and then by putting a wave through that, like a high frequency wave through that, can make those granules form into a shape. You know, maybe it's a smiley face, or maybe it's a cross, or maybe it's a circle, or something like that. And they can manipulate it by changing the frequency. So that's the kind of wave that they were using on the worms.
The example I saw, from my understanding of it, was it's like the glass of water in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Because the whole glass shakes, and so it's the water, it's the waves that form in the water from the whole glass shaking around it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. What's kind of interesting about this is the use of these in a living being could be used to perform things like surgery, because if you've got a single wave going through it, you know, they know that can go through, and that can go through harmlessly, right? Now, what you could do is, because of the way interference patterns work, you could have 2 waves going through at different angles, and where they meet, you could create destructive or constructive inferences. and then you could focus the waves, and you could use that to say you've got a growth which you think could be cancerous and it's surrounded by vital organs. It'd be very nice if you could destroy that growth without actually opening the patient up. It hugely reduces the risk, and it's just a lot safer for everyone. And that's kind of what they hint at in their conclusion, is that they think that there are some really interesting ideas for the use of Faraday waves and interference structures, which I thought was like a really cool, like, they don't really hint at the really useful stuff until right at the end in this paper. And when I got down to that, I was like, oh yeah, that is cool. That's really cool.
It strikes me as one of those things where they were kind of bored one day and they just started vibrating worms up and down, and then their boss walked in and was like, what are you guys doing? And they're like,
science.
We're studying, we're figuring out how medicine, surgery and stuff. Yeah, that's what this is an application for. And they're like, right, we've got to figure out how this is relevant. And then they just got really, really lucky.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's fantastic. I love that they've had such incredible scientific discovery or breakthrough, or at least indication of a good road to go down from doing such a, on the face of it, such a pointless experiment.
Oh, it's fantastic, yeah.
I'm going to go to the one where they actually had no real conclusion. I really enjoyed this story, and we may have to cut this one out because it might not strictly be science, but it's the management prize. I don't know if you had a look at this one.
Oh, this is the string of this is hilarious.
The Chinese trial document that it links to, actually, it seems that Google Translate was able to get it into English pretty well, and it reads fairly straightforwardly. It's definitely not written like a legal judgment or anything in the UK. In October 2013, Tan Yuhui was worried that his investment in a real estate company in Guangxi would lose money as part of it because of a lawsuit, and that explains a little bit earlier on. But he instructed this guy, Zi Guangang, to hire a killer to kill Wei, who is someone who was suing the real estate company. Zi Guangang found someone, a guy called Mo Tianjiang, and hired him to kill Wei. And I think the original Tan gave Zi 2 million yuan to hire the murderer. And then it went down the line of 5 hitmen in total.
And no one performed the actual murder, did they?
So yeah, Zi Guangang hired Mo Tianxiang, and Mo Tianxiang then hired Yang Kangsheng for 270,000 yuan plus an additional 500,000 later on. But then Yang Guangsheng then hired a guy called Ling Zhanxi, and then he hired Ling Zhan eventually for 100,000 yuan. And then at the end of it, Ling Zhanxi repented and decided not to kill Wei, and actually contacted him via a note and explained that someone had spent 100,000 yuan to kill him.
A lot more than that.
Yeah, no one died, and 5 hitmen got arrested and sentenced to prison. It's almost like a Monty Python sketch or something, isn't it? It's the kind of thing you can't quite believe that it actually happened, but apparently it did.
What's kind of interesting about this is I just finished this book by Russell Bergman called Humankind, and there's a lot in there about the deep-seated human desire to not kill and to not perform antisocial actions. I mean, the central thesis of the book is actually that human beings are fundamentally good, which is an amazingly nice thing to be reading an academic text on in 2020.
It is, yeah.
And I do highly recommend it. But this story plays right into that kind of model, because everyone went, I don't want to kill him. I don't know the bloke. Let me loan this out to someone else, and then the next person goes, I don't want to kill him. I don't know the bloke. In an odd way, it's a kind of positive social interaction, if you look at it that way. Although it is still kind of farcical the way it occurred.
It is, and I like to believe that they all had that kind of, I don't actually want to do the killing, so I'll pass it on to someone else, rather than just I can outsource my job and keep a lot of the money.
Yeah.
It may not quite be science, but it's definitely, I think, Jack, you turned it into a science story there, so thank you for that.
My pleasure.
That was my second story, so Jack, which is your third favourite Ig Nobel Prize this year?
Number 3 is going to be the Entomology Prize, which goes to the USA and Richard Vetter. So he's collected evidence that many entomologists, which is people who study insects for a living, are afraid of spiders, which are not insects.
2 more legs.
Yeah, exactly. That's, in fact, is the name of the paper. Arachnophobic entomologists. When 2 more legs makes a big difference. So
Hooray!
We did a lot of takes of that, listeners. This is a really rather in-depth study, and it's also a lot of these. It's worth mentioning a lot, if not all of these, are available for free, which a lot of scientific papers aren't. This one is particularly nice because it has a nice sort of easy to read PDF, and it has lots of graphs which were pretty obviously made in Microsoft Excel. But my favorite of them, Richard Vetter was looking into like the different traits, which, you know, trying to identify where the arachnophobia is focused, and he has this wonderful chart where he's asked the different entomologists, you know, what are the features from this list of features, what are the ones that really bother you about spiders? And it's got stuff like having many legs, the way they move, unexpected fast running, they bite, have fangs, dangerous and maybe dangerous as different categories. And there's one that right down the bottom in amongst the appearance kind of ones, which are ugly, disgusting, and filthy. Everything else has at least 20 people who, oh yeah, no, this really bothers me about spiders. Filthy, zero. Zero people care about the dirt.
I mean, you'd hope entomologists would be kind of used to that aspect of, you know, grubbing in the dirt for insects and things.
Yeah, but there's more than 20 people who are like, oh, it's ugly. I don't like it because it's ugly. Like, which I'm sort of like, I get, but at the same time, that sounds really judgmental.
Yeah, especially because they probably think dung beetles are beautiful.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, there was some interesting... It's kind of interesting for arachnophobics more generally, this paper. We often talk about exposure therapy, right? And if we expose people to stuff, they can get over it. One of the conclusions in the paper is that if the arachnophobia originated at a young age for these entomologists, even though they were exposed for years in a professional setting to spiders, it made no difference and the arachnophobia wasn't overcome. And what's the other kind of interesting thing is that even if the entomologists developed warm feelings towards like other bugs, other insects, those weren't extended towards spiders. So there might be, you know, similar things with six legs or arthropods more generally, but the arachnids seem to be excluded from this. So there's something quite specific about arachnophobia, which just being a professional bug catcher does not help you overcome, which is quite interesting, I think, because it's quite specific.
Yeah, it is odd. Is that a cultural thing, do they think? Just, you know, you get more horror films about spiders than you do about, I suppose, dung beetles or anything else.
Yeah, it could well be. It could also be something that maybe spiders tick a lot of those reflex fears that humans accumulated living on the savannah. Maybe we went through a phase where we were surrounded by very dangerous spiders, and that's just sort of innately human, is that the ones who were afraid of spiders survived, or had a tendency to be afraid of them survived more, and that's where it comes from. Or it could be totally cultural. I really don't know enough about the subject. One kind of interesting thing, he has a score of how much his respondents disliked particular animals, and there's everything on there from tigers to butterflies, but there was only one that scored higher in disliking than the spider on average, and that was the tick.
Oh, really?
The mosquito was less disliked by his respondents than the spider.
That's insane. Mosquitoes seem just universally...
They seem more
hated.
trouble, don't they, mosquitoes? Like,
yeah, they definitely are responsible for more deaths than spiders, I'm sure of that.
But then I think the tick is also kind of interesting because that's also another biting animal, right? And one of the big things in this paper is in that graph of disgusting things I was telling you about earlier, with the filthy being none of them. Two of the really big fears are they bite and have fangs. And so I wonder if there's some kind of link between being bitten and disliking a particular creature.
Very possibly. I can see that. That would make sense.
For example, octopus, much less disliked.
But they suck. Sorry, I just had to make that joke.
It's reasons like this that I love doing this podcast with you, Ben. But yeah, that was my arachnophobia story and the Entomology Prize from the Ig Nobel Prizes, which is story number 3 for me, I think, maybe 4.
It is. It was
Three,
it was number 3,
Yeah.
I think. So I think I might talk about my number 3 in my top 3, and then we can maybe give a quick overview of some of the other prizes that happened. But I'm going to go, I think, for the economics prize, which went to Christopher Watkins, Juan David Leon Gomez.
This is a brave list of names to be reading, Ben.
You throw me off now. Agnieszka Zelianowicz, Max Korbmacher, Marco Antonio Correa Varela, Ana Maria Fernandez, Danielle Wagstaff, and Samuela Bolgan for trying to quantify the relationship between different countries, national income inequality, and the average amount of mouth-to-mouth kissing. And yes, I got all of those on the first try, and you can't prove otherwise because of the magic of editing.
Just to back you up there, you genuinely did read those very well. I was very impressed by that.
Who knows if I got them right, though. I think I've probably got some of them right. But anyway, so yeah, this is almost a 2-part study. So what they were examining is romantic mouth-to-mouth kissing. And to be honest, it's very difficult to make anything sound romantic when you say mouth-to-mouth kissing in a scientific paper. But that's what they were talking about, and it's culturally widespread. So throughout the study, they actually examined over 3,000 people from 13 countries across 6 different continents. And they actually didn't come to a final conclusion, but what they found was 2 things, essentially. So the first was that mouth-to-mouth kissing is more important in established relationships. It's less important in casual or single relationship. But they also found that countries with high income inequality tend to kiss a lot more than people in low income inequality countries. So yeah, countries such as Botswana, where there's quite high levels of income inequality, so you have a few very rich people and a lot of very poor people, there's a lot more mouth-to-mouth kissing, particularly in established relationships, than in countries where there's a lot more equality between incomes. So countries like Norway, Finland, the countries that always pop up when you're talking about a good a good metric.
Yeah, the Nordic it's like Nordic plus Netherlands, isn't it? Is usually what you end up with there.
Possibly. But the interesting thing about the study as well is they found that kissing was more correlative than hugging / cuddling, as they say, or sex. So yeah, kissing was... I think that makes sense, because it's one of the things they highlight is that kissing is in a lot of ways is more of a sign of trust between people, because swapping saliva, and particularly now we know how dangerous it is with the pandemic and everything, but it kind of evolved more as a symbol of romance and trust rather than of simple mating behaviours or of lust, essentially. So, and they found that it was a bigger indicator, or it correlated with income inequality. Now, the conclusion of that is still to be examined, but yeah, congratulations to them for winning the economics Ig Nobel Prize. Just definitely an interesting thing to look at. And the research, as I should say, was gathered mainly through surveys, online surveys, so self-reported, which they acknowledge as a limitation of their study.
But it's an interesting initial sort of survey of that area, and it's also quite interesting that they looked at other forms of romantic interaction, and they found that there was such a gap, because I wouldn't have expected that. I would have expected you to see sort of to see curves that were roughly the same. I would expect those behaviors to be quite tightly correlated, but interesting that they're not,
But the countries were Czech Republic, Germany, France, Austria, I'm gonna guess.
Could be Australia.
It could be. It's lumped in with a lot of the other European countries,
yeah.
Though, so
Australia's got quite good income equality as well, so it probably is Austria.
Then UK, Republic of Ireland, Italy, India, USA, Nigeria, Brazil, Chile, and Colombia.
Yeah.
Is that 6 continents? That's not 6 continents. Maybe it is Australia. That would make more sense for it to be 6 continents, wouldn't it? Because I could definitely see Africa, South America, North America, Europe, Australia. Oh, and yeah, Asia is India, obviously.
Yeah. There's a really good book, actually, if you're interested in income inequality, on the subject and how it correlates to a bunch of other social issues and challenges that countries are facing at the moment, called The Spirit Level, which is actually quite old. It's at least 10 years old now, but it's still an absolutely fantastic read. It's mostly graphs, so if you enjoy graphs, you'll enjoy this book.
Very good. It's interesting. I think I remember one thing that stood out for me is they correlate levels of happiness and stability with income inequality. So again, Nordic companies generally score quite high on happiness and democratic stability and things like that, and have low levels of income inequality. And there definitely seems to be a strong correlation there.
Yeah, exactly.
To give you a quick overview, quick run through of the other prizes, I have to say one of my absolute favourites that really made me laugh was the Peace Prize.
Oh, that was great, wasn't it?
Back in 2018, the governments of India and Pakistan had their diplomats surreptitiously ring each other's doorbells in the middle of the night and then run away before anyone had a chance to answer the door.
It's so sweet, isn't it?
It is. I wish that was the way all countries just solved their disagreements, was just passive-aggressive doorbell ringing and bomb knocking and things like that.
I think that would be amazing. I would love it if we only resolved international disputes through playground games.
Yeah.
Think of the lives that would be saved. It's amazing.
It's incredible. Any other ones that stand out for you, Jack?
I think the medicine prize was pretty good because it seems like he noticed that something hadn't been properly categorized and then categorized it. So this was to Ninka Fullenk, Damien Dennis and Arnold van Loon, and they diagnosed a long unrecognized medical condition, misphonia, which is the distress at hearing people make chewing sounds.
My partner has that without a shadow of a doubt. She definitely has that. She absolutely hates it, and I was raised all proper like, so I chew with my mouth closed. I'm sure I do, and she still has a go at me for chewing too loudly.
It's funny because the word has been around for years, right? Like I think you've even described this to me before using that term, and
yeah, I've definitely heard it.
I think all they've really done is that they've put together, the paper's name is Misphonia Diagnostic Criteria for New Psychiatric Disorder. I'm like, is it really new? Have you not just split something into a bunch of medical terms? Like, is this that's what it reads like to me, but I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. I think the only other prize that we haven't covered there is the Materials Science Prize. I have to say I avoided partly because I'm not a fan of toilet humour and definitely wanted to avoid that. But
you are.
A team of scientists from the UK and the USA, Metin Erin, Michelle Beber, James Norris, Alyssa Perrone, Ashley Rutkowski, Michael Wilson and Mary Ann Raganti showed that knives manufactured from frozen human feces do not work well.
Important research. A
conclusion that shocked no one.
Yeah. Like, what do you mean there are better materials?
Also, the one thing I like about the website that summarises the Ig Nobel Prizes is they have a winner from 2009, Dr. Elena Bodnar, who demonstrates an invention. She's demonstrating her invention, which is a brassiere that can quickly convert into a pair of protective face masks, which I bet is paying dividends now. I bet she's a millionaire by now. No one wants to wear the bras anymore, and they could turn them into face masks. And then, that just seems like it was made for this year. So I have to check in and see how she's doing.
Yeah.
And that sounds like I can call her. But
I want you to call her. I would like that. Honestly, if you can get her as a guest on the show, like, that would be amazing.
That would be cool. I might just call her up and say your Ig Nobel Prize is being upgraded to an actual Nobel Prize for your work.
We're not from the Nobel Prize Institute and we don't have the money, but we'll call it a Nobel Prize and then you can say you've got a Nobel Prize. How does that sound?
We'll start a petition. We know scientific institutions are very susceptible to petitions like Boaty McBoatface.
Man, Boaty McBoatface was great.
He's definitely come up in a number of our podcasts now, which I bet no one was expecting, even Boaty McBoatface.
Maybe he is like the patron saint of Not a Buffalo is Boaty McBoatface.
I mean, he's not a buffalo, so
exactly.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
I think that's it. That's the main aspect of our show. That's the main segment, the 2020 Ig Nobel Prizes. We do encourage you to look them up yourself and keep on top of them because they are just fantastic. As I said, hopefully they've made you laugh and then made you think.
Before we begin the next segment, Ben, I need to go and get the empathy game because we don't have it.
You go get the empathy game. I'll just riff.
Perfect.
In fact, whilst I'm waiting for Jack, I might just record here an apology to everyone whose name we pronounced incorrectly. We did try our best, but one of the great things about the Ig Nobel Prizes is it does bring together teams from right across the world who just have a slight curiosity and the slightly unusual side of scientific research, and often, as we've demonstrated from the conversation today, have actually come up with some really fascinating findings that will hopefully have a positive impact on the world, which after all is the thing we aim to do here on Not a Buffalo.
You took that riff very seriously.
I did.
Much more seriously than I anticipated.
Time for Host knowledge, knowledge. Is that the theme song we had for this segment?
That's the theme song. We're doing Hollage time here. So this is Hollage time.
It's Hollage time.
We play one card from a game called the Empathy Game in order to increase your host knowledge or Hollage. I will roll a dice because we're not in the same room. And then that dice will tell me which card to take. And then one of us will answer that card, and then the other one will answer that card. And then you will know more about your Hollage.
I think I should read it out first, so I don't think you should look at it. I think you should just hold it up to the camera and I'll read it out first.
We can do that. That works. That works.
That sounded good.
Memory.
Memories. I'm definitely going to cut out all of my singing from this episode. No one wants to hear that. When did you break a promise?
Ooh.
That's a tough one. That's a harsh one.
Not often. Not often. I think the most recent times when I've broken promises have been promises I've made to myself where I later realized that I'd promised something wrong to myself, or something that was unmanageable or was just no longer like fitted with who I was. So I'm trying to think of a good example. So there was a time when I promised myself that I would work every hour of the day to achieve a certain thing in my career, and then I later realized that actually to properly develop into the kind of person who is good at what I do, rest was kind of key, and so I broke that promise because the aim was to get to a certain place and not to run myself into the ground. And I think that's the last time I broke a promise.
That's it's funny when you said that, because I'd be quite similar to you. I take promises very seriously, and I deliberately don't promise things, and I even simple things I avoid using the word promise unless I actually mean it and I'm dead serious about doing it. I do think they're an important thing and to try and keep. So I'm trying to think. To me, it's probably similar. I hate to. It feels like a little bit of a cop out. I'm generally trying to think of a time I broke a promise to someone else. I can definitely think of times I've broken promises to myself. Usually on the lines of I promise that I will practice a new language every day until I learn it, or I will get up and exercise. I definitely break those kind of promises all the time. To myself, well, I've gotten better, I'd say, as I got older. At I suppose trying to do less, but doing what I am doing better. But yeah, I'm generally racking my brains for times when I broke.
That's probably a pretty good sign that both of us struggled so much to answer this.
Yeah, it's definitely. It would be quite bad if we.
Oh yeah. Last week, right?
I left 3 women at the altar. I promised I'd marry all of them
on the same day. There's all around town. There's just different churches, and everyone's waiting for Ben, which would be a great name for a reboot of Waiting for Godot. Waiting for Ben takes place in 3 different churches simultaneously. I love it.
I don't want to make this film. God, I'm actually still really trying to think. Yeah, I think I've taken promises quite seriously since I was young, for as long as I can remember anyway. So I not made, and even things like, I'd never say, oh, I promise I will do the dishes, or something like that, unless if I say that, I'm going to do the dishes that evening. But I will definitely avoid saying that unless I am dead serious about doing something like that.
Yeah, this is actually something I really like about you. It's a really old-fashioned idea, but you're a man of your word, right? Like when you say you do something, you're going to do it.
I like to think so.
Yeah, so I guess that's our show.
It is. Do you want to take us out, Jack? Hopefully you enjoyed this segment of Hollage. Wait, I've forgotten the theme song. Host knowledge, Hollage.
Can I say, I want you to sing all the theme tunes into my heart.
I'll do my best.
Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe to the show to never miss an episode, and rate and review us wherever you have the power to do so. If you'd like to get in touch, we are at NotABuffaloPod on Twitter and Instagram. Not a Buffalo Podcast on Facebook, or you can contact us through the website notabuffalo.wordpress.com. Bye.
Bye-bye.